Love helping your clients but hate sales and marketing, but somehow you ended up with sales and marketing responsibilities? Then this is the podcast for you. Hi, Chief Nerd Ruben Swartz here, and I spent a long time learning these lessons the hard way, and I want to help you learn them the easy way by sharing my experiences and talking with brilliant people who have figured out how to hack not just the code, but the sales and marketing process as well. Of course, as a nerdy person who hated struggling with complex CRMs, I had to create my own CRM for people who actually hate selling, which sounds like an oxymoron, but if it sounds interesting to you, check it out at mimiran.com. That's MIMIRAN.com. And whether or not you need a new CRM, you'll find proposal templates and sample lead magnets to help you grow your business. Now let's get to it. All right. Today, I'm excited to have Tukan. He's the CEO of LeadSift, a sales intelligence platform for B2B technology companies. Maybe something I can use. He is also LeadSift's chief hacker, hustler, and dreamer. And when he's not working, he likes to play soccer and watch soccer and go hiking. He's joining us today from beautiful Halifax, Nova Scotia. Tukan, welcome to Sales for Nerds. What do you have in your glass?
I do have a glass of Angry Orchard hard cider crisp apple.
All right. I don't think we've had hard cider on Sales for Nerds, so you're taking us in new directions already. And I'm going a little bit different today, too. I've got some Texas Tempranillo from Becker Vineyard, and let me see. Not bad. I don't think it's going to compete with Spain's best yet, but it's getting there. I'm trying to support local Texas wines, and it's so hot here.
Yeah.
It's just hard to grow stuff. And they used to try to grow a lot of Cabernet, and it just didn't really come out all that great, I don't think. And now I think they're trying to go a little bit more towards the Spanish wines that have a more similar climate. So I think they're making some progress.
Yeah, this one is actually from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty good. Cider is getting really popular here in Atlantic Canada. So
I like cider, and especially like if you have it with a crepe, it's like the national meal of Brittany and France, right? You have like the savory crepe with some cider with it. It's delicious.
I didn't know that. I did not know that. Yeah, I've normally had cider not with the crepe before, but
well, it just shows that humans can ferment anything. So
there you go. Yes.
Anyway, tell me a little bit about your background. I know you started off like I did as a computer science person, and now you are kind of in charge of sales and marketing. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so my background is in computer science, did my undergrad here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then I was working as a research engineer. But while working, I also joined for my master's program. My thesis was around sentiment detection from short text. So very data science, very natural language processing heavy. While doing that, me and a few of my friends, we stumbled upon the idea of LeadSift. Back then, it was not even LeadSift. It was just the whole idea was around there's so much data available out there. And if we can use our data mining techniques, we can extract a ton of interesting information from it. And there are different applications to it. We just chose the application of, extracting and predicting buying intent. So that's how LeadSift started. And that's how I slowly started transitioning from a data scientist to a CEO and a leading sales, marketing, and everything else with very little programming.
Now, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, what do you mean by sentiment detection?
Yeah, so basically sentiment detection means in its shortest form, let's say if you have a sentence that says, I hate Apple, or I hate Microsoft, or something like that. So that's a negative sentiment.
Okay.
So using a machine to automatically detect that. Now, what I was working, my thesis was around, just to digress a little bit, it was like detecting sentiment is sort of like a solved problem in English. There are so many research done. But what I was doing was I was focusing on topic-based sentiment. So what I mean by that is, let's say if you have a sentence that says, I love Steve Jobs' vision, but I hate the latest iPhone. Now, what's the sentiment of that sentence? Is it positive or is it negative? It's neither, because it's actually dependent on the topic. So if you look at the topic of iPhone, then it's a negative sentiment. But if you look at Steve Jobs as the topic, it's a very positive sentiment. So that's what I was working on. Is my thesis was sentiment typically is dependent on a topic, and sometimes a document, whether it's a sentence or a full document, might have different topics. So the sentiment needs to be analyzed from the perspective of an individual topic.
Got it. So for example, if I'm thinking about which business leaders I admire, that sentence you just referenced says Steve Jobs might be someone I admire. But if I'm thinking about, is this person about to purchase a new iPhone? The answer is probably not.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Now, not to go too deep into this rabbit hole, but this is really interesting stuff. And I'm curious about how you handle sarcasm or sort of people saying something, but it actually means the opposite of what they say in a way that would be obvious. Oh God, yeah, I hate the new iPhone. It's only twice as fast as last year's or something like that, right? That some might actually, we would be able to tell person to person. How does a machine understand that?
So first of all, I think sarcasm is even difficult to understand for a lot of human beings.
That's probably true.
Right? So what we found out was it's actually almost impossible. Well, this was probably 7 years ago. It was impossible for us to detect sarcasm properly. So what we did, the approach we took there was we did some analysis to come up with a predefined set of terms or phrases that popular sarcasm indicates. So sick, for example, is a term that if someone mentions in the context of what we were looking at, it was actually a positive statement.
Right. Okay.
So we hard-coded some of those terms for detecting sarcasm. Back then, I haven't looked at that problem recently. Detecting sarcasm was an insanely hard problem to do.
Okay.
For machine.
And you're right. It's often hard for people. So I'm told.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially if you have a dry sense of humor. That's what people tell me, at least.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So now you've got this tool that helps people figure out what the buying sentiment is, which sounds pretty practical, but you have to go sell it to people. So how did you turn yourself from a coder and a data scientist into a sales and marketing guy?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing that I did was I did not convert myself. So what I mean by that is when I started, all of our founders were computer science people, hardcore data science nerds. We were comfortable writing code, not really comfortable talking to customers or selling a product. So our first decision that we took was, well, I was a CEO, but let's hire a salesperson to do the selling for ourselves.
Okay.
That's what we did. And in hindsight, that is not the right decision. Not because of the salesperson, but because of the reality of it. When you're starting up, you really have a glorified idea. You do not have a well-defined product. You don't have marketing collateral. You do not have figured out your ICP or anything. So it's almost impossible for an external salesperson, no matter how good they are, to sell your product at that early stage. So, here comes really the lesson learned. Number one is we learned it the hard way, that having another salesperson to sell it is a disaster it's a recipe for disaster, because they just do not have enough material. The product is not well built for someone to sell. So it took us a few months, almost a year, to realize that as a problem. And that's when I started stepping in and trying to sell that product. And that's how so it was really a necessity that I had to shed my skin of an engineer and try to become a salesperson.
Okay, that sounds familiar to me, unfortunately, because I had a similar notion, which is, why don't I just hire someone who likes sales to do this for me? And then I can check that box as the CEO and I feel great and I don't have to do all this crap I don't like. And guess what? It didn't work for me either.
Yeah.
So how did you realize that this wasn't working and that you had to change course?
Yeah. So the reality is, because the sales data speaks for itself. We were not selling enough. But B, early on, when you have a software product, one of the key things is not really making a ton of money, but in the early days, like the first few months, is actually getting a version of your product, however bare bone it is, in the hands of the customer, and getting that product feedback back to your developers, your engineers, saying, hey, this is what the pain points are, understanding that, and then getting the engineering team to build on it, iterate, send it back, and go back and forth with your customers. So that's really a first salesperson's job should be, which is not really a salesperson job, which is really the CEO's or the founder's job. What we found was, sales wasn't happening quickly enough, and this discovery, this back and forth wasn't happening. And what was happening is let's say a salesperson is typically motivated by selling, bringing revenue. There's a commission assigned to it and everything, right? So they're motivated by that. But in an early process, when you cannot sell it, you cannot upsell it either, there's that friction that starts happening. Is so the customers would like, hey, I'd buy from you if you had this, because in the enterprise product that I'm used to using had all these features. So as a salesperson, you'd sometimes come back to the team and basically say, hey guys, can we build this feature? And then the team would be like, why do I need to build it? And as a salesperson would say, well, because if you don't build, the customer will not buy. So the engineering team goes ahead and builds it without really understanding why did they want it, what's the impact on it, and all that. So that was causing a lot of friction, and we were sort of becoming a custom dev shop where a client would say, if you build this, we'd buy this. And we'd go about going in cycles trying to build it, and guess what, 90% of the times they never bought it. They're like, oh, sorry, budget is tight, let's talk next quarter.
Right.
So when all of those things start happening, that's a pretty clear indication. I mean, we should have known way before, but that's a lesson learned.
So for the folks listening who are saying, well, this doesn't apply to me, I don't have a software product, I'm not a software company, I think a lot of the sort of philosophy behind this applies to just about any business, right? When you're starting off and you're trying to validate your idea, getting the idea in customers' hands in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a product or a service or a good or whatever it is, right? Let people actually get their hands on it and play with it and do things with it and hopefully give you money for it is worth a lot more than sitting in an ivory tower and dreaming about how awesome it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it applies to every B2B software, whether it's software or not B2B, B2B company. It could be a hardware too. I mean, you cannot expect someone to build an iPhone and expect a salesperson or a channel partner to go sell it without them, even like the CEO or the founders, going and using it, giving it to early adopters, seeing how they use it, getting the feedback to the engineering team. It applies to everything.
Okay, so now you've got no more sales rep because that wasn't actually solving the problem you needed. And you're now in charge of sales, or people on your team are in charge of sales? How did it work next?
So what we did was then I took over sales, and I was the only person selling. And then what we decided ourselves was, unless we have a certain number of customers, in our case, we had 50 customers, we would not hire another person. The number 50 came basically by saying I was capped out at managing these accounts. And at 50, I could prove out that, yes, it is possible to sell this software. I had a good idea of all the shortcomings, all the objections, all the strengths, so that when we hired the person, I could train this person saying, hey, this is what works. This doesn't work. We know who the competitive landscape is. This is our shortcoming. This is how we get around it. This is what the customer gets excited. And this is typical of the sales cycle. And that's what we did. So right now we have another person in our team that does the actual selling along with me. And he's been selling 2 to 1. So he's been selling twice as much as I am. So
awesome. That's good.
Yeah. Yep.
So what did you actually do when sales fell back in your lap? You tried to get rid of it. You couldn't. It came back. How did you actually execute? What were the things that you did, either in terms of strategy and tactics, or even just in terms of your own mindset, that would let you actually be successful?
Yeah. So a few things we did. Again, this is all from the first year or so of struggling. First thing we did was we would not give anyone our software for free.
Okay.
We would have to pay a nominal amount. So that was one of the big things we did, because one of the challenges we struggled with was early on, we were trying to sell. A lot of customers were like, this is great, but can we try it for free? You can use our logo and everything, or we'll give you a case study if it works, but we'll try it for free. That never works. Never, ever, ever works. So what we decided was we'll have a very, very basic contract. We even said, I think for the first couple deals, we said we'll give money back guarantee, but there would be a nominal fee that has to be associated with it. It's like a fraction of a cost, but still there is a cost. So that's one thing that I did. And then a few things that we did was, initially we were doing, month-to-month contracts, but then what we said was, we will do a 90-day pilot period. That's another thing that we did. Paid pilot. There's no free stuff. It is paid pilot. And that's how we went to market. But at the same time, it's interesting is when I took over sales fully and were implementing these strategies, what we found out was we also actually pivoted our product. It was still around, predicting who is going to buy, but for a different audience, a different product. So one of the things we also did at the same time was, because I was the only person selling and I'm the founder, CEO, and a technical person. So one of the things we said was we would actually sell this software, the value proposition of giving them which companies would be looking to buy their software without actual software written behind it.
Okay.
The first 5 customers we closed, we were actually manually scouring the web, trying to find these signals to predict the buying pattern behavior, and then sending this data in an Excel.
Okay.
We did it for a reason, is because the last thing we wanted to do was go ahead, spend a year trying to build the software and then see no one use it. So what we did was we provided it manually, got the feedback, and as the feedback started coming, we slowly started automating part of the process until for the next 6 months we completely automated it. So that's the other thing we did. It's more of a product decision, but that's correlated with the sales process too.
Well, I think that's a great example also of the difference between what you're building or selling and what the customer is buying. And I think especially for us technology people, it's easy to get enamored of the product and the tool and the architecture and the clever algorithms and so on.
Oh, yes.
The customer doesn't actually care about any of that stuff.
They don't.
They just want the solution to their problem. And especially at the beginning, if it's do it all manually, as long as you're doing it and giving them the solution, that's a great way to be able to iterate really quickly. And I know when I started building my product, there's a bunch of stuff I had to take out because I made things too complicated. That it was like there was no good reason to ever do that. For some reason, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have all the power and flexibility to do X, Y, and Z? No, it turns out it would be awful.
Yeah.
And so, not only did I waste a bunch of time building it, I had to waste a bunch of time backing it out as well. And I should have just kept things really simple at the beginning.
Yeah. And that was a big lesson learned for us.
And the other thing I think is really important is there's a huge difference from free to paying a penny, paying some non-zero amount. And I think there's a bigger gap there than there is between paying, say, $10 and $100 or $100 and $1,000. There's that huge transition between free and paid. And I think that's a really important point. How did you guys settle on making sure that somebody put a little bit of money in?
Yeah. I mean, we literally, there's a funny story. The first amount, it was $99 a month. That's what we said. And we just literally picked it. It was a nice number. It was not 100, but close to 100. Let's go with $99 a month. We just picked it out of thin air and we went with it. The first 3 deals, we sold that. The fourth one, I was in San Francisco pitching to this company. They're pretty big. And I was talking to the VP of marketing and he's like, so how much does it cost? And I said, it's $99 a month. He's like, no, it's way more valuable. I'll pay you $500. And moving forward, I want you to charge $500 a month.
Right.
So we are like, sure, if you say so. He's like, nope, it is. I'm going to pay you. You have to put that in the contract. So I did that. And then moving forward, every deal was from that point was $500 onwards. And no one objected. And it was still super cheap. So that's how we came up with the pricing and we stuck to it.
That's awesome. And I think that's a great illustration, right? A lot of folks think that everything has to be a race to the bottom. And when you find the people who really value what you do, they are much more concerned with, does it do exactly what I want? And does it do it quickly and reliably and so on and so forth versus is it $99 or $4.99 a month?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got this new kind of strategy of going after these paid trials, paid pilots. What do you actually do day to day as sort of a new salesperson? How do you actually get people into this funnel and get them to pay?
Yeah. So the other thing that we also decided was because we were so small, so early, no one knew about us. So no one was going to come to leadsift.com to check us out. I mean, we believe in content marketing, but I think it's a long form game. So we said, rather than us waiting for them to come, let's use, and it so happens that our business gave us the data, right? So we were in the business of predicting who's going to buy your software. So we used LeadSift to predict who was in need for us. We got a list of companies ourselves. Initially, we were doing it manually. And then what we did was we did a lot of outbound marketing. Meaning we got a list of companies, we got a list of contacts, and we basically sent personalized emails to them saying, hey, this is what we do, and this is how we can help you. Would you have 15 minutes for a call? For the first 2 years, I would say 80% of all our business was through that, was reaching outbound to people who were showing some kind of intent signals that our system picked up and that fit our ICP. We were just basically reaching out to them.
And so what was approximately your ratio of outreach to conversation?
Good question. So this is 2016. We got about 7% meeting. So if I sent 100 emails, 7 of them had responded positive. There were some negative responses, but there were 7 of people had positive responses. And out of the 7, about 80% ended up having a meeting with us.
Okay. And then how many of those became customers approximately?
On an average, what we found out was 20% of people that we spoke to that were a fit. Because we did speak to people that were not a fit for whatever reasons, for their size, for the industry they were in. But 20% of the people that were a fit became customers.
So approximately for those 100 emails that you send out, about one person's going to become a client. Is that order of magnitude, right?
Yeah.
And I just want people to get a sense like, hey, I sent 50 emails. I didn't get any customers. Well, like even folks who do this successfully, it takes a bunch of work, right? Like there is a bunch of elbow grease involved in doing this, and especially doing it in a personalized level and not just spamming people and so on.
A lot. And if I can add one thing, the other thing is a lot of the time I see this misconception. They're like, okay, I got 100 people that fit our ICP. If I reach out to them, 7 will reply, 5 will have a meeting, 1 will close. No, what you have to do is those 100 people we reached out, for each one of them, we have to send them at least 3 to 5 personalized emails, follow up on LinkedIn, Twitter to basically engage them. So it's never a one email and done thing.
Got it. That's a great point. Thanks for adding that. So there's a bunch of work, right? Like you're not avoiding sales. You're doing a bunch of sales here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the model is inside sales, right? Because we are sitting here in Halifax and we don't have any customer in Halifax. So, you're reaching out to folks in California, Boston, Atlanta, whatever, New York, Toronto. So you have to be persistent and sending these thoughtful messages out to people.
Now, how much of those emails are templatized and how much is customized for each particular prospect?
30-70. I would say 30% is personalized, 70% is templated.
Okay. And so you kind of have a spot in the template where you can say, and I think this applies to you because of X, Y, and Z. And
yes. So I can give you a couple of examples. So one of the things that we do is, again, we have a functionality within LeadSift that can tell me, given a company, what were some talking points about the company. We call it buzz.
Okay.
And a buzz could be they recently attended an event, they won a business award, they had a new product launch or something like that. So some kind of a growth event. So we would then leverage that and say, hey, notice you were at O'Reilly conference in Texas last week. How did it go? Did you know that LeadSift can help you get a better ROI on your next event? So that's a very relevant personalization nugget that we would drop in the email and then follow on with the rest of the script.
Got it. Okay. So you're doing a bunch of work. There's no spam. There's no automation. It's just you're doing the research. And of course, you've got a tool that helps, which is nice.
That's right.
Then when you get the meeting, how do you execute during these meetings?
Yeah. So all our meeting, as I said, is inside sales model. So we do it through video conferencing. Oh, so there's another thing that we got rid of is we got rid of a deck. The first time when we were selling, through a salesperson, we had a deck. Like we went through a 30-minute present. Out of the 30 minutes, 10, 12 minutes were a deck. And we did ask questions, but it was a deck and then a demo.
Mm-hmm.
So a few things we did was, the first thing was we got rid of a deck. There was no deck. And we have iterated since on that. There was a story that the customer would connect to, that would talk to the pain point, ask them some qualification questions, and then show a demo with data that is tailored for them.
Okay.
So all our demos are tailored to the customer with their data. So let's say I'm talking to an IT security software company. I would show them after the first initial discussion of telling them what LeadSift is and how it does what it does, answering any questions, the qualification. Then when I show them the data, it would always be accounts or companies that are looking for an IT security software.
Right. Never
for a marketing automation software or something like that. So those are two things that we also did. So that was a big thing. And then what did we do? What's the process then? So we did the demo. We then asked for specific next steps. And then a lot of the times, depending on who we are talking to, they would bring in other people, other stakeholders, maybe their bosses. Maybe if we're talking to, we primary target marketing might bring in sales. We have another call or another demo, and then there's a follow-up. And then it's a fit or not, and then we send the contract, close, and hand it over to customer success.
Now, how did you come up with this process? How long did it take to do this? Like, this all makes a ton of sense. And I'm guessing you didn't say, okay, sales rep, this isn't working. I've got a different way of doing this. We're going to start doing it this afternoon. Boom. Right? Like, you had to learn how to do this.
Absolutely. And we learned it the hard way. I mean, we learned it two ways. One is the first 2.5 years when I was not selling, I was sort of the secondary role. We learned from listening to that, what was working, what was not. We sort of digest some of that feedback, and then I could make that suggestion when we started from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was reading a ton of blogs and relevant articles on Quora and things like that. Jason Lemkin has been an unbelievable guest contributor in this whole space of SaaS.
Yes.
So we learned a lot from those best practices and just iterating from there on.
Now, how did you find it psychologically in your own head doing all these things that you probably never thought you were going to be doing? Was it fun? Was it hard?
I was super scared. I remember having this chat with my co-founders saying, guys, I'm very scared of doing sales all by myself. There was nobody else. I was very scared. I'm not going to lie, but someone had to do it. So there's a weird thing that I guess triggers in my brain is like when there is no other option, you have to step up.
Right.
So from from fear, it transformed into excitement. And then once you start closing deals, right, there is no other rush higher, greater than that. So I guess, so that's how the transition has been for me.
Congratulations on that. And do you have like a sales playbook or anything for this person who's currently outselling you 2-1?
Yeah, no, well, so that's another thing I should add. My colleague Alex, we sell together. So I also have learned a ton of best practices and processes from him. He's not super experienced, but he had one sales job before, or maybe couple, but he brought in a ton of best practices that he learned. He's pretty young. So together we sort of came up with the playbook. I did not have a playbook. I just had some broad guidelines of what was the script that I used, what were the objections, what were the questions to ask. That's all I had. And from there on, we have narrowed it down to like a couple questions up front, the demo process, what to show and what to ask. So we now have a pretty good process from actual organizing the sales piece of it.
Got it. And so you kind of built the playbook together.
Yes.
Okay. Now, how did you, especially at the beginning, before you had some of these wins under your belt, how did you deal with the folks who weren't interested or gave you a negative response over email, or you took the meeting but weren't interested?
Yeah. I mean, I would be lying if I said it's part of the sales game, because I'm not a salesperson professionally. It was a shock, right? You do take it personally. Well, I did initially.
Sure.
But then as I got going, I learned that it's not that they're hating on me. They just don't need the product. The timing is off. And a lot of the times what I've noticed is sometimes they would like, yeah, sorry, it's not a fit. And I might get a little bit upset and disappointed. But a lot of the times they come back like 6 months later. It's like, hey, can we chat? And we have closed a lot of deals that way. So that's also another thing that I've learned is if someone is saying that they might not be just brushing me away, it's genuine that they don't have the time, they don't have the budget, but they're interested. So we have now figured out, well, I'm getting better at figuring out when someone's really brushing me off,
right,
and have no need, or when the timing is just not right. That's the experience piece of it, to be honest with you. Is once you do that multiple times, you can figure that out pretty quickly. One thing that I learned, and I think it's a very interesting story, well, at least for me, it's one of the best lessons learned that I learned in sales, was when I was trying to sell lead sift to an enterprise customer. It was a massive client, Fortune 100 customer. We did 3 demos in person in their office. The third demo was with a team of 30 people. I presented to 30 people, like they got up and clapped and everything. I was so pumped. I remember calling my team back in Halifax saying, guys, we are going to land this giant of a customer, and it's smooth sailing from there on. But after I came back doing the pitch, the demo and everything, they just went cold. They just never, they were sort of ghosting me. It was a connection made to this customer by an investor of ours. So I reached out to the investor and said, hey, can you please look into it? Why have they gotten cold? So he got back to me, said, it looks like the value proposition was not clear. I got super upset. So I fired off an email to this investor saying, I wish they told me early on the value proposition was not clear. And that's when this Zen-like moment hit me when he replied, our investor. He said, customers that do not get your value proposition do not owe you any explanation. And I think that was the biggest lesson learned in my nascent sales career is it's upon us to make sure that the customer understands what we are doing and how it will solve their problem. A lot of the times, especially as a tech guy, I get excited. It's like, oh, we have this,
Right.
you can do this, we can do that, and blah, blah, blah. And customers would smile at it, clap at it, and laugh at it. And you get that false signal saying, oh, we are crushing this, we are going to close this. While at the whole time, back of their mind, they have no freaking idea how this would solve those specific problems they have. Because I didn't even bother asking them what problems they have. I had a vague, high-level idea what our product can do and has done for other customers, and I tried to shove it down their throat. So that's a big, big, big lesson. So now I never take it for granted. I realize the customers don't owe us anything, even if they understand the value prop, to be honest with you. But there are, again, I've learned the best practice that my colleague told me is this agreement that we sometimes mention upfront is like, all I need from you is if this is not a fit, you tell me, and there'll be no hard feelings. So things like that. But that's a big lesson learned.
That's great. And I think that agreement of, hey, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you give me a hard no, that's actually much appreciated.
Yeah.
And so we can both move on and not waste time. I'm not insulted. Please feel free. That's really powerful.
Yeah, it is.
And the other thing that I think is really important is, especially for tech people, but I think a lot of us, like, we get so into how proud we are of whatever it is that we're doing that we talk as if we're the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works in the buyer's mind.
Never.
So if we want to be part of their story, we better learn to tell their story, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And I've got to put a shout out here for Becker Vineyards, because I actually opened this wine 30 minutes before we started, figuring it might need a little time. But while we've been talking, it's actually opened up considerably, and now I'm really enjoying it.
Nice.
So I know I was a little lukewarm at the beginning, but I didn't want to be slandering our Texas vineyards here. They're bringing some good stuff. Just make sure if you're drinking this, you decant it or you blend it or whatever, so that it can open up a little bit before you really start drinking.
Mm-hmm.
How's your cider treating you?
Really good. Really, really good. I love it. It's sweet. It's not complicated, right? It's very simple. So I love it.
Awesome. Well, Tukan, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you or about LeadSift?
Yeah. So two things. If you want to find more about LeadSift, go to leadsift.com. It's leadsift.com. There's enough material for you to play around. There's a free tool that you can try out. It's called Buzz. The link's right there on the website, so you can check it out. You can request a demo, request a free report. So that's about LeadSift. If you want to know more about me personally or get in touch with me, I'm super active on LinkedIn. Just look up Tukan Das on LinkedIn. Connect with me. I post a lot of material about LeadSift or what are the best practices that we are seeing. So I share that. And I'm also on Twitter. TDAS is my Twitter account. So look me up and connect with me. Always happy to help.
Awesome. And we'll, of course, have links to all that stuff in the show notes. And congratulations also on having a 4-letter Twitter handle. That's pretty impressive.
Yes, I started early. I was an early adopter of Twitter.
Tukan, thanks so much. I really appreciate hearing your story and your wisdom, and congrats on making that transition from data scientist and programmer to sales and marketing guru.
Not a problem. I don't think I'm a guru yet, but I'm learning.
Awesome. Thanks for listening. If you have a friend who would benefit from this episode, please pass the word along. Have a friend who wouldn't benefit, but you haven't talked to in a while? Give them a call. iTunes reviews are great to get the word out and help me create the show that's most useful to you. And if you're frustrated with your sales and marketing process or lack thereof, check out Memorand, the CRM for people who hate selling. Until next time.